let's talk about how clefs determine notes. Well, we're going to focus on the treble and the bass clef at first. There are many different clefs. Most clefs are what we call movable clefs, which means the position of the clef on the staff system determines the notes. Look at the example of the French violin clef. This clef loops around the first line of the staff system. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Here you've got the French violin. Notice how we have this loop here. It is surrounding the first line of that staff system. That makes the bottom line a G. And all the other lines and spaces are named in relationship. So if this line is a G, we go up to the first space, it's now an A. Then we have a B for the next line, then C, then D, then E, F, and G. And notice something interesting about this. When written correctly, the top loop of the treble clef also shows you where the G is. The standard treble clef wraps around the second line. We see it in the second example. This is typically how we see the treble clef. It is sitting here clearly in the staff, and this loop here wraps around the second line. At the top of it, this note here is actually a G, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. This makes the second line a G, and it's very important. This is why putting the treble clef in the right place on the staff is so important. Place the loop in the wrong position, and you've changed all the notes in the piece. They've all changed, and the performer has to transpose based on what you've done. There are other clefs as well. The soprano, mezzo-soprano, alto, tenor, and baritone clefs are additional clefs that are not used as often, with the exception of the alto clef. These are known as C clefs because the center of the clef points to where you can find middle C. This is something we'll be talking about soon. The other clef that is used fairly regularly is the tenor clef, but the baritone, soprano, and mezzo-soprano, those are not used very often. We also have other clefs like the bass clef, percussion, and tablature. With the bass clef, what happens is you have these two dots that circle around the F line, and we're going to talk more about the bass clef on its own. Percussion simply means you have what we call inharmonic pitched instruments. So inharmonic is not enharmonic. There's a difference. We'll be talking about that in this course too. Tablature is not something we get into. That is something specialized for guitar players, and we will not be talking about that in this course. But everything else we're going to have a discussion on.